Tonight's roadshow has been designed to help you navigate the maze of regulatory reforms and access the right information that will make a difference to you and your clients. My name's Peter Doherty and I'm the General Manager of Public Practice and I'll be chairing tonight's event. The roadshow provides an opportunity to hear from Australia's key government regulators and government agencies and to learn about the resources available to you to assist your small business clients. The format tonight is that each speaker will have 12 minutes to present, and then at the end of the presentations we'll move to an open forum. And the open forum is an opportunity for you to ask the questions that matter, to look at the insights that you've learnt from the speakers' presentations tonight, the focuses of their agencies, and look at how you can benefit by the services they provide, or for you to provide frank and open feedback. Tonight's session's being filmed, but I just want to emphasise is after the sessions, the speakers' sessions have actually concluded and we go to open session, none of the open forum will be actually filmed, so please feel free to ask those questions because tonight's really about providing you with an opportunity to ask the questions that matter. Let me introduce our first speaker. Joe Zubak is a Senior Manager in the Small Business Compliance and Deterrence team at ASIC. He has responsibility for overseeing a national team that liaises with and educates small businesses about their compliance obligations. His team also conducts surveillance and enforcement activities, much of which is focused on illegal Phoenix activity. In his previous roles at ASIC, he has overseen enforcement teams conducting large-scale corporate governance investigations involving some of Australia's largest companies. Please welcome Joe.
Thanks, Peter, for the introduction and also the opportunity to come to speak to your members here this evening. So the theme of the presentation is about navigating the maze of regulation, which in actual fact means navigating the different compliance and laws that are imposed on business. Now, as you know, there are many laws that are imposed on business. For small business, this can be quite difficult and daunting. The good news is that government is aware of this. They also know how important small business is to the Australian economy and want to help as much as they possibly can. Now, one way the government is helping small business is by reducing the regulatory burden on them by eliminating unwarranted regulation and making compliance as easy as possible. And this also helps to reduce the cost on small business. Now, while that's a good thing, there's always going to be some sort of laws that need to be complied with. Now, for regulators like ASIC, educating small business about their compliance obligations can be quite difficult, and the reason is because we find it quite difficult to actually engage and reach them, and because they're quite fragmented, meaning they're not. Meaning that they're not very well connected to industry groups or associations. Now, that's where you guys play a very important role. Now, most small businesses will seek the advice of an accountant, and there was a few years ago where we conducted a survey where we asked small businesses where they source their information from, and not surprisingly, they said they got their information predominantly from their accountants. And that was well ahead of the likes of regulators like ASIC. We were very much down the pecking order. Now, I believe that the ATO more recently conducted a similar type of survey which sort of reaffirms those findings as well. So for us and the other regulators, it's important to leverage the relationship that you have with small businesses so we are better able to communicate with them. And at the same time, you're ideally placed to communicate to government the needs of small business, back to us. So before I tell you about some of the ways that ASIC is helping small business, I wanted to start by explaining why small business is important to ASIC. Now, you're going to hear some stats and figures here tonight, and it's probably going to be repeated a number of times by the different agencies that are here. So currently there are around 4.4 million companies and business names collectively that are registered with ASIC. Now around about 96% of those are small businesses, and when we say small businesses we use this generic term of having less than 20 employees. Now collectively these small businesses employ about half the Australian workforce and make up about a third of Australia's GDP. Also, most of ASIC's financial services and credit licensees and the users of those products and services provided by those licensees are also small businesses. So it's clear to see that small businesses is a very important client to ASIC. So how are we helping small business? As part of our commitment to protecting small business, last year we established an Office of Small Business, and that's been sponsored by one of our commissioners, one of ASIC's commissioners. Now the Office of Small Business has implemented a small business strategy that focuses on three key elements, them being engagement, assistance and protection. I'll talk about engagement first. So we engage with small businesses to better understand and respond to the challenges and opportunities faced by them. That means we're better positioned to meet their needs and their expectations. Our engagements occur with other peer government agencies, advocates for small business like the Small Business Commissioners, industry bodies, associations, business advisors like accounting and legal bodies, and directly with small business. Now, every year we conduct around about 100 engagements. In fact, I think we're up to about 130 or thereabouts at the moment. We assist small business in two ways. First, by providing efficient and effective registry services, and second, by educating them about their compliance obligations and providing resources and guidance that is relevant, useful and easy to understand. We talk about our registry service, and that's where most of our interactions occur with small business. To make it easier for small businesses to interact with ASIC, we have been streamlining our registry services. Since its implementation in 2001, ASIC's business name register has saved businesses over $200 million in reduced fees to register or renew a business name. And our services are more accessible with more services provided online, like creating a single online portal for companies and business registrations, which is connected with the ATO, so small businesses don't have to contact both agencies when they register a company or a business name. We also have improved our support services to help small businesses and made it easier for them to contact us through our website, online services or customer contact centre. We're also reducing regulation. In 2016, as part of the National Business Simplification Initiative, we've reduced the amount of time that business need to comply with regulation and interacting with agencies like ASIC. And what that means is they can actually spend more time working on their business as opposed to regulation and compliance. Now, we have a number of education initiatives to assist small business. In 2015, we established an innovation hub to help fintech startups navigate the regulatory system without compromising investor and financial consumer trust and confidence. The majority of fintech startups are small businesses. The Innovation Hub assists these businesses by providing access to senior staff at ASIC to streamline licensing process. As part of the Innovation Hub initiative, ASIC is focusing on engaging with industry on the developments and opportunities in regulatory technology, which is commonly referred to as RegTech. We have a number of online services available for small business. ASIC released its first business app last year. That's on the basis of some work that we did with the ATO, and that's to assist small businesses going into businesses for themselves, and it provides practical tips, checklists, case studies and links to additional information on creating and running a small business. Now, the app is free to download on either Google Play or iTunes. We have a small business hub that's located on our website, which provides relevant and easy to access information for people who are thinking about starting, who are currently operating, or who want to close a small business. It also contains a link to download our publication called Running a Small Business in Australia, What You Need to Know. It was republished in 2017 and had a translated and simplified Chinese as well to assist our migrant small business community. The ASIC Money Smart website contains a range of information for those looking to start their own business, including the First Business Online module, information on borrowing and credit, insurance and general money management resources. The website contains publications translated in 26 different languages. For more information about the Innovation Hub, the Small Business app, Small Business Hub and Money Smart can all be accessed quite easily by just visiting our website. Our third focus is on protecting small business so that small business can compete on a level playing field. Now, one of the ways we are doing this is to crack down on that nefarious conduct which is known as illegal Phoenix activity. For those that don't know, illegal Phoenix activity involves creating a new company to continue the business of an existing company that is intentionally liquidated to deny creditors access to the assets of the company. This occurs when the directors of the failed company transfer the assets to a new company without paying a fair or market value for those assets, while leaving the debts with the failed company. After the failed company is liquidated, there are no assets to realise to pay out those creditors. Now, directors that engage in illegal Phoenix activity have an unfair advantage because they have lower operating costs, and that means that they can compete for work at a lower price than someone who's competing legitimately. Illegal Phoenix activity mainly occurs in the small business sector, and its victims are usually other small businesses, employees and government through lost revenue. Now, ultimately, it's the taxpayer that bears the cost of people that engage in illegal Phoenix activity. There was a PwC report that was commissioned by the Fair Work Ombudsman back in 2012, and it estimated that the yearly cost of illegal Phoenix activity on the Australian economy was up to about $3.2 billion. Now, ASIC has a number of strategies to combat illegal Phoenix activity. These include surveillance, compliance programs and taking enforcement action. And while the perpetrators might be the directors of the company, they're usually assisted by promoters and facilitators who assist in how to engage in illegal Phoenix activity. Now, government's very, very serious about cracking down on this. They've established a Phoenix task force back in November 2014, comprises around about 27 different agency members, and there's also some recent reforms before government at the moment. So more information about illegal Phoenix activity can be found again on our website under the Small Business Hub. Now, another way that ASIC is working to protect small business is under the unfair contract terms. From November 2016, ASIC has been granted power to enforce unfair terms in standard form contracts that small businesses have entered into, if it relates to a financial service or a product, and one part of that contract is a small business, i.e. less than 20 employees, and the upfront contract doesn't exceed $300,000 if it's for 12 months of length, that contract, or $1 million if it's over the 12-month period. Now, a recent example of ASIC assisting small business under the unfair contract terms was having the big banks make comprehensive changes to the loan contracts entered into or renewed with a small business. Now, these changes were initiated by Kate Carnell, who's a small business and family enterprise ombudsman, and Craig Latham's actually from that office, and in fact he's the deputy ombudsman, so he'll talk about that in a bit more detail when he gets up. Now, these changes resulted in better protections for small business from contract terms that were considered unfair. So more information about unfair contract terms, again, can be accessed directly from our website. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was industry funding, what it is, what it means, and particularly for small business. The government has introduced new laws that change the way that ASIC is to be funded. The legislation came in effect on the 1st of July 2017, and under these arrangements, entities that are regulated by ASIC will now pay the cost of ASIC services. So ASIC's regulatory costs will be allocated across 48 industry subsectors based on ASIC's costs for the previous financial year. Under the industry funding model, ASIC will cover the actual upfront spend during the previous financial year. So there'll be two types of levies imposed. There'll be a flat levy and a graduated levy. Now, depending on the subsector that the entity operates in, will determine if they pay a flat or a graduated levy. In June 2018, ASIC will publish indicative levies for each subsector for the 2018-19 financial year. And I think it was last year, they actually published those levies already, so you don't have to wait to June if you want to have a look. They're on our website. In January 2019, so we're talking about 8 months' time, ASIC will issue invoices to the subsectors to recover the cost of the 2017-18 financial year, and entities have until February 2019 to pay those invoices. ASIC will also be charging a fee for service for processing licensing and professional registrations, applications for relief, and reviews of corporate financial transaction documents. Those invoices will be issued in July 2018. Now, importantly, there will be a $5 levy for every small proprietary limited company. Those invoices will be issued in July 2018. And for more information about industry funding and fee for service, it can be accessed again. Just go straight to our website and you'll find it there. I want to finish off by saying that ASIC is committed to helping and protecting small business. We've increased our services and made accessing ASIC a lot easier. We're also protecting small business through our work in combating illegal Phoenix activity and working with peer partners to ensure that small businesses aren't unfairly treated by entering into contracts where there's a power imbalance. Now, I just want to finish by saying or stressing how important accountants play in helping ASIC and other regulators to get the message out about compliance and also about the services that we have on offer. So I hope you found my part of the presentation informative. We're not taking questions now. I think we'll wait until the end during the panel discussion. So thank you.
Our second speaker this evening is David Salisbury. He's a General Manager of Consumer Small Business Strategies at the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. Amongst other things, David is responsible for the ACCC's role in educating and liaising with small business. He also oversees compliance with several industry codes, including franchising, the Franchising Code and the Food and Grocery Code. His recent projects have included ensuring businesses are aware of their obligations under the new business-to-business unfair contract terms law and new requirements for country of origin labelling. Please welcome David.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation to be here tonight and the opportunity to talk about the ACCC. I actually qualified as an accountant. That was what was my career path. It was meant to be. I've taken a bit of a detour, and I took a detour in about 1995. I thought I'll just see what life in the public service is like, and I'm still there. But it does give me the opportunity to reflect on those early days in the accounting practice, and I'd go in, I'd work with a small business, and it was more than just, yes, they'd want the accounting, yes, they'd work out what's trying to happen with the suppliers, what's happening with their cash flows, but also, while you're here, what's the law, what's the commercial law, what's contract law, what does that get me? So in putting tonight's presentation together, I thought, well, hopefully in a small business setting, you don't come across the ACCC from day to day. Probably a good sign. You're not ripping off your consumers, you're not fixing prices with your competitors. It's a good sign if you don't know about the ACCC. But what I did, and as sort of, as Joe mentioned earlier, our legislation, similar to Joe's, it contains obligations for small business, but importantly there's some rights in there as well. So all I'm planning on doing today, giving you a taste of the more common things that that some of the small businesses might find relevant with the ACCC. And so the list of topics I plan to go through here are credit card surcharging, which is essentially what you're allowed to pass on in your business to your customers as a surcharge. I'll talk about the prohibition on unfair contract terms that Joe mentioned. We deal if it's not a financial product, it's us for the ACCC. But it's also a right that small businesses have to push back on people issuing them standard form contracts. I'll talk a bit about small business scams. Part of the area that I runs ScamWatch. You might have heard about that. But there are scams. We've moved beyond the sort of the facts from Nigeria. We are now into very serious organised crime. This is serious businesses, serious international criminal businesses targeting all businesses and particularly small businesses. I'll talk a bit about that. I'd really like to just mention, give you a flavour of the resources we've got too. So really, if you hear about these things, no, hang on, the ACCC's had something to say about that. Let's go to the website to see what they've got to say. I'd also like to emphasise that the law that we administer, particularly the Australian consumer law, it's a national law with multiple regulators, and so while the ACCC looks across, operates on a nationwide basis, we deal with widespread consumer harm. We also have counterparts in each of the states. Here in Victoria, we have Consumer Affairs Victoria, who administers the same Australian consumer law that we do. So off to excessive payment surcharges. Now, it's essentially a ban on excessive surcharging applied to all businesses that charge a surcharge when they're accepting a card payment. It came into full effect on the 1st of September 2017. It applies to all businesses now. Originally it only came in applied to large businesses. So if your customers or clients are imposing a surcharge on customers for using credit, debit, prepaid card, the surcharge must not exceed your cost of accepting that payment type. Now, significantly and perhaps oddly for some accountants trying to cost this thing, you're not allowed to include your own internal costs when calculating labour, electricity, overheads. The way that the business's cost of acceptance is defined here to include merchant service fees, rental and maintenance of the card terminal itself, other fees incurred in processing card transactions such as switching fees, fraud-related chargeback fees, cross-border transaction fees. So really all the costs directly related to accepting that card. How do you work that out? Ask your bank. So your bank or payment facilitator is required to provide your customer, your client, with statements that clearly set out what the average cost of acceptance is for that type of card. The ACCC is armed with new powers to enforce this ban, and we will investigate complaints of excessive payment surcharging and take enforcement action where necessary. There's a range of penalties, including infringement notices, which is the sort of the regulator's equivalent of a speeding fine of $12,600 for a corporation, or $126,000 for a listed corporation. But we've also got court action open to us where the penalties are available go up to over $1.3 million per contravention. And a demonstration of recent ACCC action. Some of you may be aware of the business Red Balloon last year. Red Balloon is an online trader. It sells experiences in Australia, such as skydiving jumps, wine tours, cooking classes, and we found that the way that they were accepting, or the court rather, Red Balloon agreed that the way that they were charging surcharges on their credit was excessive, credit card surcharge payments, and so they paid penalties totalling over $43,000. So that's the enforcement side of the ACCC's work. Unfair contract terms. Now this is one that we think is a significant, of significant importance, potentially significant opportunity and right for a number of small businesses out there. So Joe mentioned what the parameters of the small business contracts are in terms of the value of the size of the business and the value of the contract. The essential nature of the things, these are standard form contracts that are pretty much given to small businesses on a take it or leave it basis. Where did this come from? The ideas come from the consumer law. So it had already been in the Australian consumer law for about 5 years. And what it really does is to say, well, if there's an unfair term in a standard 4 contract, that really is void. So to help us all recognise what a potentially unfair term might be, you can consider things like, does it cause a significant imbalance between the rights and the obligations of the other party? You can think about if the term is reasonably necessary to protect the interests of that stronger party, or if the term would cause one party detriment if it was enforced. Also, how transparent is this term? To what extent do people know what they're getting into? As a bit of example might serve. A small business entered into a standard form contract with a telecommunications company, and the contract allows the provider to disconnect access to all or part of the service at any time without notice and at its absolute discretion. Hypothetically, the small business must pay a large cancellation fee if they decide to leave the contract early. This term would likely raise concerns under the unfair contract terms, because it gives this service provider really broad powers to terminate the contract without any balancing rights for the small business. So that the theme of balance is very important when looking at whether unfair contract terms might be within a standard form contract that your clients might be given. And so the contract law has been in place, as Joe said, since November 2016. And Joe mentioned the thresholds there. We've already started taking action in this area after a long sort of educative educative program. In 2017, we took action against JJ Richards, which is one of Australia's largest privately owned waste management companies, over the issue of unfair contract terms. And in 2017, the federal court declared that 8 terms within the JJ Richards standard form contracts were unfair and therefore void. Now, in that case, JJ Richards will go ahead, change their contracts. For us, it was really important to know that those the origin of that investigation for us was small businesses complaining about their waste management contracts. Scams. Show of hands, who's received an email that they thought might be a scam in about last week? Yeah, it's really pervasive. This is scattergun, and this is a really important issue for small business, and it is increasingly cyber, but it's not just cyber. It's also by telephone, and some of the old techniques are still used, but the ones that rely on digital approaches are ones that are really quite prominent we see with targeting small businesses. So I've got a list of the different types of scams there. I'll explain a little bit about what they are, but to give you a sense of the problem, we have, through our Scam Watch service, operate a reporting service. So we open for the public. We ask the public to report scams they see in through an online form we have attached to our Scam Watch site. And in 2016, we received over 150,000 scam reports. The total figure reported actually lost by these people is over 83 million. We know that's the tip of the iceberg as well. So, and it's important that the damage caused by scams goes well beyond the financial, and you can only imagine the loss in time and productivity in small business, the stress that business owners and staff might feel, and how it affects personal relationships when there's a sense that people have been basically the victims of a crime of deception. So businesses, as we see, are just as vulnerable to scams as anyone else in the community. And if we've got a top 5, unfortunately, the most common scams we see targeting small business, overpayment scams, where they're trying to get the business owner to refund a scammer who has sent you too much money for an item you were selling, despite the fact they've never bought the item in the first place. False billing scams get you to by paying issuing fake invoices for directory listings, advertising, domain name renewals and office supplies that you didn't order. Malware and ransomware. Malware that will trick you into installing software that allows the scammers to access the file and track what you're doing. And then perhaps ransomware on top of that demands payment to unlock your computer or files. Phishing with a PH are attempts by scammers to trick you into giving out personal information such as a bank account number, a password, a credit card number. Now this is the sort of, when this sort of theft of an identity of an employee takes place, this is where business systems do tend to become vulnerable, and some of you might recall the Brisbane City Council losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in quite what's a relatively straightforward case of phishing and false billing. And investment schemes. So they essentially involve the business moving into an investment scheme which really hasn't properly done its due diligence. So how do you protect yourself in that sort of environment? For small businesses, it is about due diligence. There's some basics there about internal controls as well. So know who's sending you the invoice, know who's demanding the payment, and have those controls within your business to ensure that that the requests for payment are authentic. So information and help. We're committed to communicating with small businesses clearly and effectively. We know you don't need to know about what the ACCC does from day to day, and nor do your clients from day to day. But every now and then, so we look for those efficient ways where busy business people can just click on and find what they might need to know if they know something's connected to the ACCC. So we've got a range of guidance material here, and we've got a dedicated web pages, and that sets out both the rights and the responsibilities of small businesses under the Competition and Consumer Act. We have information networks, so basically email networks. So our small business and special interest in franchising as well, each of those has networks that we just email out a couple of times a month. We might let them know what's going on in the sector. We have free online education programs designed to help small businesses learn about rights and responsibilities under the Competition and Consumer Act. We put out a twice yearly report providing a summary of our activities in small business, agriculture and franchising sectors. And finally, we have a dedicated small business helpline that's staffed by the ACCC Info Centre. And so if you're interested in any of these, any of the things I've talked about in this presentation tonight, I'd encourage you to come visit our website there. Remember, accc.gov.au/small business. That's all I have to say in my presentation tonight, but I'd be very pleased to take questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Our next speaker is Christopher Smith, who's Assistant Director of Stakeholder Strategy and Engagement at the Fair Work Ombudsman. Chris has worked in various industrial relations roles with several government agencies. He started off providing assistance to employers and employees in Wageline. He has worked in a range of roles as team leader, as an inspector, various education-related roles, and is currently enjoying working in the stakeholder strategy and engagement team. In his role, he's responsible for leading key projects to facilitate Fair Work Ombudsman's engagement with key issues, stakeholders and communities. Please welcome Christopher.
Thanks very much, Peter, and thank you to CPA for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to come along and speak to the members here tonight. What I'll do is I'll start by providing you a bit of an overview about who we are and what we do. So first up, Fair Work Ombudsman is responsible for regulating most Australian workplaces. Our role is to ensure compliance of workplace laws, and a big part of how we do this is by helping businesses, and particularly small businesses, to understand what their obligations and their options are as employers. We support Australian workplaces so they can be compliant, productive and inclusive. And to do this, we have a range of services, advice and assistance available. We make sure, and we work to make sure, that the businesses have those resources necessary in order to be compliant with the workplace relations laws. We also conduct a number of proactive campaigns or audits in the field each year, normally around about 4,500, and we help 4,500 businesses to help them understand what their obligations are. We also conduct investigations when we suspect that employees are being underpaid as well. And from time to time we take matters to court, and you may have heard or read some of our stories about various media outlets about where we do that. I have to point out, however, that it is only a very small percentage when we actually do that. In most cases, we are able to work with employers and employees in order to get a suitable outcome. The important thing that I want to stress at this point is, importantly, with that and through all of this, you can certainly come to us for help. Now, we've got an area, accessorial liability is an area that we've been starting to use a lot more in relation to our litigation matters. Section 550 of the Fair Work Act already extends responsibility beyond the employer for breaches of workplace laws. It extends the available remedies and penalties to a person or an accessory who is involved in a breach. Accessories can include directors, it can be managers, it can be lawyers, business advisors, and most importantly for this audience, also accountants, and that would of course be in-house accountants as well as those providing advice to businesses. Accessories can also be businesses further up the supply chain, and it can also, they can also be personally liable and also can have exposure to penalties. If you're in a position where your duties do include calculating employees' wages and other entitlements, then you're responsible to making sure you know exactly what those wages and entitlements are meant to be. Professionals should consider this position in a situation and understand, by not ensuring there is compliance with the Fair Work Act, that this amounts to facilitating a breach of the law. It's really good and it's really positive and terrific to see that your employers or clients care enough about doing things properly to engage you as trusted advisors. We know they want to do the right thing, and that's great. or at least they want to stay out of trouble, and that's also fine. We're here to help you understand your obligations in relation to workplace laws and compliance. Unfortunately, not everybody wants to play by the rules or to work with us, so we make use of these provisions, as you'll see in these following case studies. Case study number 1 is New Shanghai Charlestown Restaurant. Now, the Fair Work Ombudsman has secured almost $400,000 in penalties against a company and 3 individuals, including a HR manager, for systematically exploiting employees, overseas workers, at a Chinese restaurant in New South Wales. And then what they did was they fabricated records in order to cover it up. The HR manager, in this case, submitted that her culpability was reduced due to the fact that she was acting under direction of the restaurant owner. Justice Bromwich rejected her submission, finding that she had acted in her own interests in choosing to be a knowing participant in the underpayments and also taking an active role in the creation of false records. Justice Bromwich said, and this is his quote, "There's nothing wrong with sending the message that an employee should indeed resign if that's the only alternative to continuing to participate knowingly in illegal activity, ideally coupled with reporting to the conduct in a case such as this to the Fair Work Ombudsman." What this judgment highlights, firstly, is being directed by a boss doesn't necessarily get an advisor off the hook, firstly. And secondly, professional advisors should consider their position in a situation versus potentially facilitating breaches of the law. Case study number 2, as I have up there on the screen. The Fair Work Ombudsman also used accessorial liability to obtain penalties against a professional services firm for knowingly helping one of its clients exploit a vulnerable worker. Victorian accounting firm, it was Easy Accounting 123 Proprietary Limited, was penalised $53,880 after the Federal Circuit Court found that it had facilitated underpayments by its client. In this case, it was fast food operator Blue Impression Proprietary Limited. Blue Impression was penalised an additional $115,000 on top of that. What this judgment highlights is accessorial liability laws extend not only to the culpable in-house managers at businesses who potentially exploit their employees, but also to external advisors who facilitate the underpayment of workers. Through this, the courts have made it very clear that those who are knowingly involved in the exploitation of workers may well face significant penalties. Both of these decisions, they were recent. They came through in November 2017. Also important to note at this stage that Easy Accounting 123 Proprietary Limited have just lodged an appeal against the decision. So just point that out as well. What are the key messages from this? Key messages are as follows. So firstly, external business advisors need to put compliance with the law above their own personal interests, or they may face serious consequences. The courts have made it quite clear that those who are knowingly involved in the exploitation of workers can face significant penalties. Trusted advisors, such as accountants, must explain the rules to their clients. They need to make it clear when they're in danger of breaking them, and it should not be, and also should not become involved in breaches of the law themselves. We've run a number of these sessions around the country now. One of the questions I inevitably get, what should you do as advisors? What do you do? Firstly, also what can you do if you detect non-compliance within a business where you're working with or you're directed to be non-compliant by your client? As a general guide, we would consider it appropriate for an advisor to bring any potential contravention to the attention of those responsible for making those decisions, and also for those who are required to act upon decisions as soon as possible. We also consider it best practice to document and keep written records in respect of any decisions or any actions that are taken. There's no common law or legislative duty to comply with an unlawful direction, and the message that we're trying to raise is that it is illegal to break the law. So let's take a bit of a look at what's available for you to make sure you're getting the right information, whether it be for yourself or for one of your clients. Fair Work Ombudsman has a range of free resources that have been created to support businesses in achieving compliance. Our website, fairwork.gov.au has a wealth of information about rights and obligations under Fair Work Fair Work Act and Awards, as well as being home to our other online offerings as well. We have information and resources there that are also specifically targeted towards small business. Important to stress at this point that it is fairwork.gov.au. There have been a few different versions, and if you do a quick search you may come up with a different one. Our services are all free of charge. There is no charge whatsoever. Fairwork.gov.au is our website. So all of our resources and everything I talk about now is completely free of charge. We also have, as it has there, PACT, which is our acronym, our Pay and Conditions tool. And you can check pay rates, including penalty rates, overtime and allowances through PACT, our Pay and Conditions tool. PACT is mobile friendly, and you can use it to determine wages and other entitlements under modern awards and also the national employment standards. You can save sessions in the calculator as well, just view later, or if you want to go and take it along and show somebody else, you can do that as well. You can also save your final wage sheets in My Account through use of PACT. Speaking of, My Account. My Account is a function on our website that allows users to register for more personalised workplace information based upon the relevant industry. So if you're dealing with retail, you can get relevant information pertaining to the retail industry. Building construction, you can get building construction information provided through there as well. So it is tailored, once you indicate your preferences, tailored specifically to your industry or your client's industry, if that may be the case. It's a client's portal. It provides personalised industry-specific information, and by registering for My Account, users can view tailored information that's relevant for them, get priority support, you can ask questions of the Fair Work Ombudsman, so send questions through and save our replies when they do come back. Save results impact, as I said. Save awards, so if you have particular awards that you're a favourite to work with and you have that pertaining to your business or to one of your clients, you can certainly save that. And you can also bookmark pages on our website as well. You can also access our award-winning online learning centre, which has a range of courses available. Once again, they're all free. The newest one will step you through what you need to know about payslips and record-keeping obligations. We have other courses there, one including about difficult conversations, so you can get practical tips on how to respond to employee concerns and how to deliver bad news. Many people have to do it, not many people do it well. So there is a way of doing it. These courses all take between 20 to 40 minutes, and you can get a certificate at the end. So we've won, as I said, we've won awards for these. We're very proud of them. We've had difficult conversations. We've got one on hiring employees. We've had a lot of people coming to us saying, look, we want to ensure we hire employees in the best way possible. How do we do that? Well, there's a course that we've developed on that. So it covers off on attracting, selecting and inducting new employees. And at the end of the courses, it also links you back to relevant information on our website, so whether it be a template or whatever. Which brings me to the downloadable templates. Can make record keeping involved with hiring employees, payslips and other common workplace issues easier. And we have a range of different templates available. Once again, free of charge, cut and paste, do as you wish with them. Job advertising templates are all there. So some people feel they need to go elsewhere and try and figure out how to do it and what are they going to do, what are they going to include. It's all done. It's all done. It's on our website, so it's all sorted. Letters of engagement, if you're hiring somebody or if one of your clients are hiring somebody. There's also letters of termination. They're also on our website as well. So a lot of people are starting to find out about this, and it's great because we can see our numbers rocketing. People are certainly using that, and that's great that we can certainly let you know about that. They're all done. All the hard work's done. We also have best practice guides to help small businesses and employers of a range of workplace issues. Areas including a guide to employing young workers. We also have managing underperformance and resolving workplace disputes amongst many others. So we have a number of them there on our website as well. Fair Work info line, as it has there, the 13 13 94, available between 8 a.m. and 5:30 p.m, Monday to Friday. It also offers a priority service for small business employers. So you call up and you select number 3, and it's a priority service for people who are small business employers. So contact the number 13 13 94. The one thing I want to impress upon you all is that we are certainly here to help. So whether it be through our website, through our Fair Work info line, we can certainly help. Thank you all very much for your time. I hope today's session has been a lot of benefit to you. I'm more than happy to handle any questions both in the group or afterwards if you wish. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Our fourth speaker tonight is Matthew Umuna, who's the Assistant Commissioner in the Small Business Experience area of the ATO. The Small Business Experience teams works to deliver value-added guidance on the tax and super system obligations for small businesses. Matthew has been with the ATO for more than 15 years and has held senior roles in corporate tax, international areas for public and private groups and high wealth individuals. This has included several years working on the design and implementation of the TOFA regime, responsibility for the ATO's energy and resource industry strategy, and APO, Advanced Pricing Agreement casework. Please welcome Matthew.
Thank you very much. Make sure we go in the right direction here. Here we go. So, like everyone else, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Picking up the theme where Joe started, just thought I'd rattle off a few stats. So when we talk about small businesses in the ATO, we're talking about 3.8 million small businesses, and they've got turnover less than $10 million. So unlike a number of the other regulators, we look at turnover, not number of employees. So we have a bit of a different test, and therefore we use different numbers, obviously, as a result of that. Now, these 3.8 million businesses pay about 17% of all income tax and about 23% of all GST. So small businesses have a huge contribution to the tax system, and obviously agents and tax advisors play a key role in that, for some stats that I'll show a bit later. So when we talk about lodgement, 88% of all small businesses lodge tax returns via a tax agent, and so that's why sort of coming to presentations like this, talking to agents is a really important role, because you play a key role in ensuring their tax obligations are met. Compare that to BAS, so the activity statement's about 45% are lodged via an agent, so obviously small businesses are making some assessments of things that they can and cannot do themselves. Just a bit of in preparing for today, thought about a number of things that we could talk about, but trying to target to the audience, sort of narrowed it down to a couple of things. So some things that we're going to talk about tonight are your role as intermediaries, the key role you play in making the tax system work, the cash flow coaching kit, cash and hidden economy, which is a key strategy that we've got going on and have had going for a number of years. And I just wanted to touch upon the Four Corners episode from a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure I might get a few questions a bit later. Obviously cannot talk about anything that was raised in that program that is case specific. But I did want to just say that as of today, about midday, we there's a call centre number, I'll just say it slowly if anyone is so interested, 1800 199 010. And if you want to lodge a complaint or ask that a matter be reviewed, then you just press 6 and you go straight through to a dedicated area to look at those things. So I won't touch on that too much, and I'm sure Craig might have a couple of things to say a bit later. So yeah, happy. No pressure for Craig. So as I've touched upon, tax professionals are key advisors. So we know sort of that 95% of small businesses pay an accountant for tax and superannuation help. And so similar to the stats that Joe touched upon before, sort of tax agents play an absolutely key role. Sort of, as you can see on our stats there, sort of second is a bookkeeper, where 30% of small businesses are prepared to pay. Then it's down to 7% of small businesses that are prepared to pay for a business advisor, and then sort of government agencies fall in behind that. Now obviously you're not paying for government advice, but the key intermediary, the key person they come to are tax advisors. So obviously a lot of the work that we do focuses on how we can actually work with advisors and through advisors rather than trying to necessarily target small businesses themselves. That's not to say working with small business isn't important as well, but obviously there's a leveraged opportunity by being able to talk with advisors. So some of the key things that small businesses come and talk to you about, and hopefully this resonates with you all. Cash flow, financial management and record keeping. So there's some of the key things that they say that they need help with and look for assistance with. And the reasons they've told us that they come to advisors is because you understand their business needs, you can interpret the information for them, and you can help with their business planning. And I think it's that sort of translating the generic advice and guidance that we can provide down to this applies to you in these specific ways. And that's, I think, a point of differentiation. So we try and target our advice to you to support those kinds of conversations. So with that in mind, and hopefully a few people have seen and heard this, we've developed a cash flow coaching kit. So this was a program that was a package that was developed through 2016 and 17, and it went live last year. For those who don't know what it is, it's about having coaching conversations with small businesses and walking them through how to manage their cash flow better. And unlike a lot of ATO products previously, this one is white labelled. So we have developed the product, we make it available to advisors to use, but there's no references or distinguishing marks that make it an ATO product. So it's sort of totally, we hand it over, you go to the training, we hand the product over to you, and then you can use it as you see fit. So it's very much actually trying to sort of recognise the fact that people don't want to necessarily come to us for advice, and sort of giving you a tool that you can use to assist with those conversations, and not have the sort of the branding of the ATO in any way interfering or interrupting that conversation. Part of the logic in developing this tool was that we did some research, and we found that by and large small businesses are time poor. They're overwhelmed with the volume of information that all the government agencies put out, and so actually almost the reverse is becoming true, that there's so much information they're overwhelmed, so they don't look, and so we actually have to tackle things in a different way. Another bit of research why we started with this product as a first cab off the rank in this sort of working much more purposefully through advisors is that, different bits of research, but here a couple of things to just call out is research shows that 60% of small businesses cease operating within 3 years. 90% of small businesses failures are due to cash flow. So obviously, if we want the economy to thrive, if we want small businesses to prosper, actually helping them with their cash flow is a critical piece of the equation. And we've been working with CPA Australia and key accounting firms to roll out the training of this course. So hopefully some people have gone through the course or will shortly. Another thing that I just wanted to talk about tonight was about our cash walk-in program. And so this is a program where we're doing some analytics and sort of seeing where there's a sort of some anomalous situations and where there's some unexplained wealth that we can't explain. Our data sort of shows that there's pockets of things. And what we're doing is actually, we also do the analysis to say there's disproportionate use of cash, or not use, but number of businesses in an area disproportionately only offering cash services. So you can't use FPOS or other sort of forms to pay. And why we're looking at this is we're not saying cash is sort of, there's anything wrong with cash per se, but just disproportionately we're finding that people who are cash-only businesses make a number of mistakes, and sort of their tax and record-keeping obligations aren't sort of up to the same level as others who offer merchant payment facilities. What we've been doing is going out, so the program basically runs is that months ahead of visiting a site, we'll issue letters to all the businesses in that location. We'll just say that, look, we're coming out to do some education visits and have a chat. And then ahead of that, we'll also talk to the local newspapers to try and highlight the fact that this event's happening. There's some town hall events where we come and talk and provide general information. And then we go sort of effectively, as the name connotates, we walk through the area, the shopping precinct, and talk to each business individually and just ask some questions about their record keeping, the way they're doing it, and sort of encourage them and show them the benefits of actually offering merchant facilities as part of their business operations. And anecdotally, look, we've done research on this part as well that just sort of says consumers actually prefer having that merchant facility available. So we're trying to actually sell the benefits that beyond the tax benefits or the record-keeping benefits that come from that, which translate into making it easier to do your tax returns and meet your tax obligations. Also just worth noting that in the next month we're going to write to about 50,000 businesses around Australia and just highlight some of that research that says that consumers are more likely to frequent a place that offers electronic payment facilities. Also just wanted to touch upon, sort of indirectly, but the Black Economy Task Force. So this is a big area of focus for the small business area within, well, for the tax office period, but the small business area where I come from is the area charged with looking into this activity. So a couple of years ago the government commissioned a report. The interim report has been published. The final report's yet to be published. The interim report had just over 50 recommendations about a number of activities or things that could be done to sort of help eliminate the black economy. One of those has, ahead of the finalisation of the report, has been picked up by government and was announced in the budget, last year's budget, and this is a measure to ban sales suppression software. Now I'm hoping people in the room don't know what sales suppression software is, but effectively it's a program. So there's from a compliance perspective, and I'm sure this is true for all the regulators, if you go to an electronic format, then we can come in and we can look at your electronic records and we can sort of tally up things and say, here's your 10 sales for the day, they total, your profits are, etc., etc. So it's great compared to cash, where it's hard to keep track of things. But sales suppression software is something that if you load into your computer, you can then start to manipulate your electronic ledger. So for example, you could say, I want to remove every 10th transaction off the ledger, and so that you effectively start to have two sets of books. Obviously, there's a disincentive, or there maybe is an incentive for non-complying people to use that, but there's a very strong disincentive for the regulators, and so the government have made that illegal. Like I said, I don't want to labour the point, but I just thought it's a useful thing to know about in the context of that black economy, and it's the first of the announced measures to help tackle that, the black economy. And again, black economy from a tax perspective is an important thing because we want to create a level playing field. So, if your competitors are not meeting their tax obligations, if they're underpaying their staff, if they're doing anything sort of to circumvent regulation, that gives them a competitive advantage because all of a sudden they can charge less than you. So the obvious incentive for you is if you want to stay in business, if you want to compete, you've got to sort of do what they do. So actually tackling things like this is something that we see as fundamentally important to our role as tax administrators. But it goes beyond just the tax. It's actually to help businesses compete on a level playing field. Something else that I wanted to talk about was just agents of concern. Now, obviously, talked about the key role agents play in the system, and so agents might have the ability to talk to 100, 1,000. Clients a year, maybe more, individually, and so that gives them great ability to influence and shape the way individual taxpayers, businesses meet their tax obligations. So obviously the converse of that is true, that if there is an agent who's not doing the right thing, they can have an incredible impact on the whole, ripple through the system. So we've got a sort of a strategy and a focus area where we're looking at agents of concern, and so again the data and analytics says some of these agents have returns and sort of some peculiarities that make them stand out from others, and we're looking at what can we do to sort of correct that behaviour. Again, hoping that no one in the room this relates to, but just to give you the definition when I'm talking of agents of concern, what does that mean? An agent of concern is someone whose behaviour has been identified and assessed as an immediate and ongoing threat to revenue, integrity of the tax system, or their clients or their wider community. And it's where their business as usual risk treatments or controls have not or are not effective in mitigating risks without an escalated and coordinated treatment. So it's sort of, hopefully it's an atypical thing. I'm hoping no one in the room, that it doesn't resonate with anyone. But again, I think it's just sort of, managing that whole system that sort of, if there are opportunities for some people to cheat the system, and seemingly you're getting away with it, then that creates an incentive for others to follow that. And obviously, you know, the tax system's built on a model where we believe that most people try and do the right thing, and so obviously you've got to support those people who are doing the right thing and make it difficult for those who are not. And that's sort of all I wanted to touch upon. Unlike the others who have sort of put up slides around where you can go and get more information, given the audience, I sort of thought that we've got previously had our portal, we're moving to the practitioner lodgement service. I'm assuming that most people are very much aware of those support services, so I thought I would not talk about that one. Head shake? Is that no, you're not aware of the... So, well, sorry, I just assumed. It's a dangerous thing to assume. So for people lodging tax returns, agents who are lodging tax returns, we have a portal. We have had a portal. It's been switched off, decommissioned this year. And so tax time 2018 will move over to what's called the practitioner lodgement service. But effectively, this is just an electronic way for tax agents to be able to prepare tax returns and transmit them into the ATO, rather than having to sort of go on and use our systems. You can use your own software. Then once that tax return's complete, it's just transmitted across the ATO. Fair enough. The move from the portal to the practitioner lodgement service was something I think that was only on dedicated computers, a bit clunky, hard to use, and a certain degree of instability with the bespoke service. The practitioner lodgement service is an online service that can be used anywhere, and I think, but with web-based software and whatnot, hopefully it'll be a bit more stable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Now, our final two speakers are advocates for small businesses and often facilitate the difficult discussions with regulators in an effort to provide feedback and improve government policy. Judy O'Connell is the Victorian Small Business Commissioner. She commenced in this role in 2016, and this role she advocates to make sure Victorian small businesses have a fair and competitive environment whilst running their businesses. Judy also manages the quick, low-cost dispute resolution services for small business. Judy has had extensive experience in tax administration with a public service career of over 30 years. Prior to being appointed as Commissioner, Judy was at the ATO, where she was Assistant Commissioner for Small Businesses. And at the ATO, she also helped to educate small businesses about paying their tax. Please welcome Judy.
Thanks very much for that, Peter. How many people have actually heard of the Small Business Commission? Okay, yeah, about, oh well, not, of course you guys should. Probably only about 5%, which is quite normal. We're the best kept secret, I think. So I'm the Victorian Small Business Commission. Most of the other states have got commissioners as well, and we've got Kate Carnell and of course Craig's here as the her representative as the Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman. So we work very close together on national issues, and I work on state-based issues for Victorian small businesses. So I'm and really it's to make sure there's a level playing field for small business, because it can be quite tough for small business when you talk about when they're up against large business and large government agencies. I'm a statutory authority, so that means that I can't be sacked by the government. So if I want to advocate on behalf of something that is a different view to the current government, I can do so. Haven't had to do that yet, but that sort of power is there. We don't have a definition of small business, so if somebody thinks they're a small business, then they're welcome to come and see me or the office. It's interesting, I think Matt touched on it, that there's so much information out there, and in actual fact I've been doing a fair bit of work down at the Latrobe Valley at the moment after the closure of the Hazelwood power plant they asked to come down and what I could do for small business down there. And so we've actually pulled together all the government agencies to sort of have a bit of a pop-up information centre in various towns. And when I was doing this, I sort of went and asked at the federal, state and local level if all the agencies could come down. 16 different agencies there are that a small business has to deal with. And that means really you as accountants have to deal with 16 different agencies. So it's a minefield in terms of the amount of information out there and who you have to deal with. And what I'm finding is all these government agencies are saying, you know, go to the website, got a great website, just go to the website. So for a lot of small businesses who still aren't, you know, technology is not as advanced, that can be a real challenge to them. And it must be a challenge to you, I think, as accountants as to how you can synthesise the massive information and all the information that the agencies are trying to tell you that is really important to their clients, and work out what you need to actually tell your clients as the most important things to tell them. Having said that, I think accountants are the most important. I've got a tax background, and I sort of say, you know, that a lot of small businesses are very good at what they do, so whether they're a plumber or a builder or a chef, but they don't necessarily have the skill set to do the business side of it, and the accounts and cash flow, overhead management and work-life balance are the three top issues that I'm finding when I'm going out and talking to small business. And so I sort of say to them, you know, you don't cut your own hair. You go to a hairdresser because you want it to look good, but you'll try and do your own books or your own business side. So I'm a big advocate for accountants. So that's enough plug about how wonderful you guys are. Now I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so what we do, I advocate on systemic issues, and as I said, I work very closely with the other commissions. Some of the things that we've been working on, and I've got some forms over there if you actually want to have a look at it. One of the things when I came in was around mental health. So a small business owner who'd actually had severe depression had sort of said, you know, it's all very well if you're an employee and you have a mental health or acute anxiety or bipolar or something like that, you can go to a doctor, get a doctor's certificate, take time off work and get yourself better. But if you're a small business owner trying to run that business while you have severe health issues, it is very hard. So we've worked very closely with Beyond Blue, COSBOA and a number of small businesses who've had mental health issues, and develop this mental health strategic plan, which there's hard copies there, but it's also on our website. And it's really about getting the small business owner to think about it up front, about what their triggers are for stress, whether it be overhead or getting the next lot of supplies in or whatever it is, and then working out that they've actually got time out in their day to actually do something about it. So if you want more information about that, it's really good. The other thing that we've been working on is called the Australian Supplier Payment Code. So, and we did this nationally, so it was run out of the Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman's office, and I'm just going to say Craig's office in future because it's such a long name to talk about payment times. And what we found is that most small businesses have 60, 90 and worst case scenario 120-day payment terms. And not only that, when we did a survey, they were being paid, they might have 60-day payment terms, they were being paid 15 days late on average, so they wouldn't get paid until 75 days. And that's just not acceptable. It is really around both government and a large business using them as banks. So we got together with the Business Council of Australia and worked out this Australian Supplier Payment Code. Now there's 75 of the largest businesses in Australia now who've signed up to that code, not only businesses but also government agencies as well, signed up to that code to say they will pay small business within 30 days and they will pay it on time. So the large banks Telstra, AGL, BHP. There's a lot of them who've actually said that they will be good corporate citizens and sign up. So I'm doing an awful lot of work with that, and to make sure we get many, many more businesses. And CPA and some of the big accounting firms should be on that list as well, I think. So that's the type of work that we do. If anyone's got any systemic issues, then come and chat with me. The next one, I won't talk much about this one, but monitoring is around if there's any new legislation that comes in Victoria, I get to review it first if there's an impact on small business, just to see that it makes sense, because sometimes some bureaucrat will be thinking up this great idea, we'll just make them fill in this form for every time they do that. And if they're a large business, they've probably got someone who can sit down and do that. But if you're a small business and you've got yet another form to fill out, it can be a red tape nightmare. So I can review that. It's also looking about what are the current issues that we should be looking at. Energy prices is really big, so we're working very closely with the ACCC, and we've worked out what we can do to help small businesses in Victoria, and got an information pack there. And the thing that when I'm talking to small business at the moment that's coming up is the NBN, and they're calling it every issue that they've got with the internet is all the NBN's fault at the moment. And I think it's a bit around not understanding what it is, how it works, when the outages happens, what can work. So we're doing a fair bit of work now to actually unpack what those key issues are around the internet. An example was I was up in Horsham, and this lady was saying she had, I'm going to call them out because they did, Telstra was hers, and they had an outage, and she rang them up and she said, look, my internet's not working, and the person on the phone said, yeah, it's a planned outage, it's up on the website, you should have realised. And it kind of reminded me of that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when they said, well, the Earth's going to be demolished, and you got told because it was was up on the website. And so, I think that there's got to be something more than just a thing up on the website saying there's going to be a planned outage. So we're looking at that sort of issue at the moment. I won't talk about that. We do a lot of engagement. But the other best kept secret is around resolving disputes. So any small business that has a dispute with either another business, be it small or big, or a government agency, can come to our office and we will resolve it. Now, in the first instance, if it's someone hasn't paid their bill, or they're late, or they've got these services, websites come in, so someone's built a website for them, they're not happy with the website, the small business owner won't pay, the website developer won't give the passcodes over. We can quite often, just by talking to both parties, get them to resolve it. So 30% of the ones that come to our office get resolved just by us talking to both parties. And that doesn't cost anything, so that doesn't cost a small business owner anything. If it goes to mediation, which is really bringing both parties in, and a lot of the times they have a solicitor there, but a lot of the times they don't, and we've got panels, both here and regional panels, that will, and in the main they're barristers, who'll sit both parties down. It goes for about 3.5 hours, and they'll mediate the discussion. So, for example, we had one, it was about a franchisee and a franchisor. So the franchise stipulated that this person had to open specific hours, and what he found was on a Sunday that from about 2 o'clock till 5 o'clock no one came in the door, and he had all these, he could show that he just was losing money by staying open, and the franchisor wasn't having a bar of it. It said in your contract you have to. So they ended up coming to the office and we mediated it, and the franchisor, to their credit, actually gave way and said, okay, well, let's try for 12 months and see how you go with not opening at that time. So that costs $195 to do that. So to go to VCAT these days costs about $5,000 before you walk in the door, and that versus $195 at our place is quite useful. So it's the best kept secret. I think there's about 15,000 disputes the small businesses have in Victoria alone every year, and we get about 1,700 of them. So a lot of them are actually paying large solicitors' bills, they take it to court, or they don't worry, but it really does impact on their business. So if you... I know it's yet another thing you have to remember to remind your client, but you're more likely to hear about if they're having a dispute or an issue to come to us. And that's all I was going to talk about tonight, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Our final speaker tonight is Dr. Craig Latham, who's the Deputy Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman. Craig's experience stretches across business, academia and in the public service, both in Australia and New Zealand. He has specialist expertise in commercial and tax law, regulatory reform and private sector and cross-government collaboration. In his current role, Craig has a particular focus on speedy and low-cost dispute resolution for small business and family enterprises. Please welcome Craig.
Thanks, Peter. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight. I will, however, start with being a bit fractious about a variety of things. Accountants are very special, despite me having a shot at my own hair. It didn't last very long, and I do pay other now small businesses to cut my hair. But accountants have a very special position here, and one of being the trusted advisor, the one person that businesses will come to see at least once a year, and probably a lot more than that as well. So there's some really great stuff you can do, and hopefully I'll also be able to pass on a little bit of what we can do that you can value add off the back of as well. The other fractious thing, and there's a few to come, was small business definitions. Unfortunately, we have got a small business definition. I think, argue at the time that it would be great not to have one. But when asked, well, what should it be? In my view, it was, well, what's as big as I'm allowed? And so we ended up with the largest definition across, I don't even think anyone's beaten us yet, in the Commonwealth space of 100 employees, which means that it's none of this 20 stuff. We really get up into that SME, the me part of the SME market. So not Coles and Woolies, but a lot of what else is out there. 99% of all other businesses would be potential clients of ours. The ATO Four Corners, and I did watch that. This is fractious item number 3. We, alongside Treasury and also the Inspector General of Tax, have been entrusted to do a review of the ATO's approaches. And so we are very interested, and we've put a call out for if clients have been dealt with in a heavy-handed way, if you've been subject to garnishee notices that you think aren't appropriate, also the loss of ABNs and the inability to get them back, all that sort of stuff. We're very keen to hear from you as well as talking to Matthew, who is a pussycat in real life. But please also feel free to talk to Matthew. The other thing, and Peter made this point, our office, like Judy's, is a bit different to the other regulators. I, of course, an unregulator. We're looking at better ways of doing things. When I look at systems, our approach is to improve that business system, the overall business environment. How do you do that? You need both good law and regulation and good administration. So we're looking across the whole palette of what's happening out there around law and regulation, but not stopping there, looking at the way that government and others actually act inside the system as well. So, what do we actually do? So our office is both, and very much like Judy, advocate and assister as well. So on the advocacy side, research and inquiries, the latest one is the ATO one. I'll talk about some of the others we've done over time as well. The one thing about our office, though, that is a bit different to other offices that do inquiries is that we don't forget when we've done an inquiry. So we do an inquiry, we make some recommendations, and we don't go away. So you'll have other agencies may well make recommendations. It goes to government. Government says yes or no, and then everyone moves on. We don't forget. We keep coming back. We will say the same thing over and over again until it actually gets done. We comment on proposals, again annoying other departments, and providing advice to the Minister. Annoying, actually informing is probably the more positive way of saying that, but getting in there and making a difference for small business, providing advice to the Minister as well. That's the advocacy side. On the assistance side, this is one-to-one support for your clients. So when your clients comes to you and says, you know, I've got a problem with government, you know, I've got a problem with this other business, they're not paying me, this other person's given me the wrong thing, whatever that might be, that's when you can contact us. It's a no wrong door approach. We will not duplicate other people's services. So if there is somebody better, and our legislation requires this, there should be more of this in legislation as well, good legislation. Our legislation says if somebody else provides a service and is appropriate for the people to go to, then it's the duty of our office to get them there. If there's not one of those, that's when we will help you directly. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the numbers. They're large and rising for us as well. As a relatively new office, we've seen our second birthday, but we're still fairly young in terms of agencies. So around the assistance, we deal directly with the other party, much like Judy. A large number of our matters will get resolved by just us taking exactly the same approach as Judy does and going and approaching the other person and saying, look, this is what's been said, what do you think? We will write to the CEO of that other business, so if it's Telstra, it will be the CEO of Telstra, whoever it might be, and we will talk directly there, and you will find when you do take that approach that the CEO will say, oh, this doesn't sound right, this is not what my company stands for, I'm going to fix it. We make referrals to alternative dispute resolution. So like Judy again, we have a list of mediators, but also conciliators and case appraisers and others as well. So mediation, as you probably mostly will know, is where you get the parties together and seek to facilitate the discussion so that they can get to a resolution that's hopefully of benefit to both parties. Conciliation is sort of a hard-edged mediation where the conciliator actually gets in and pushes much harder, suggests more approaches through. We often team that up with case appraisal, which is getting an expert in to actually say, you know, you reckon you got a case here? Well, let me tell you, and then actually lay it out. So really do some vigorous reality testing for the people in dispute. And of course, don't duplicate. If it's not us, get you to who can help you. On the assistance side, I've said here it's over 2,000 contacts per annum. That was in our first year. In this last quarter, I think we're shy of 800, but we're approaching 800. So we're looking quite considerably over that initial 2,000 contacts. Our focus for the matters that we do directly are on government, so Commonwealth government. It could be the ATO, it could be ASIC, I can go along the line here, and say, look, we're interested when you have a problem. So we're really, you know, the sun's not shining when you ring us. So you've got a problem with Commonwealth government, come to us, but any other government will get you to the right spot anyway. We also deal with companies, interstate and international trades, our special thing, but also other Commonwealth government areas such as insurance, banking, telecommunications, intellectual property. The issues that we get are really varied. Often they are to do, and the vast majority will be sitting inside that contracting space. It's a problem with the contract, and that can also be goods and services provided weren't right. Increasingly, and this is recently as well, we're getting quite a number of phoenixing cases, and this is not happy phoenixing. There can be happy phoenixing. This is illegal phoenixing, potentially. So happy phoenixing is when you've fallen over, you dust yourself off, you get up, and you don't cause other businesses to go down with you. Illegal phoenixing is often where you plan to go down and allow other businesses to go down around you. So we're increasingly getting issues there. We're seeing an industry that's bobbed up. around providing services to exactly do that. And so that's something, again, we've started work on and we will continue with. Also, government action. So everyone needs now, well, they need an app. Every government agency needs an app, but every state and city in Australia needs a light rail. When you get a light rail, small businesses will be, get hoardings put up in front of their shop and make it hell to get to them. We're working with some of that. In Canberra, we have our very own light rail coming in, which has caused some issues, but we also have issues around green bins and government competing the private sector. And there's a whole bunch of things in that space, changing roads to go the other way, removal of parking. There can be anything in there. And again, we're interested in those sorts of matters. Large number of unfair contract terms. Pretty much every contract that I get, even new contracts, have got unfair, what I would regard as unfair contract terms in them. I have, and I didn't bring it along, but I have the poster child of unfair contract terms. It was a 2-page agreement, and I highlighted every unfair contract terms, and so pretty much you could read the whole agreement without actually having to go off a highlighted part. We're seeing a lot of that. Unfair contract terms, serious. When you have one, it makes that term void. It's gone. So if a client is using a contract, they may think it's fantastic. They may have stolen it from one of the big boys or girls around town. They're using this contract and it's got unfair contract terms. When they get challenged, void, right? You don't get to use them. They don't get replaced with something that's not quite so bad. They're gone. So if you've got, and I see this a lot, like a penalty, a liquidated damages, big penalty clause in there, it's not just, okay, that 100,000 or whatever you're going for is out. It's, you get nothing, right? The term has gone, right? So really serious stuff, unfair contract terms. Our office itself can actually demand information explanations as well, so we've got some really good powers. We can, on the advocacy side, hold inquiries and demand that people come before us and give us evidence. On the assistance side, we can demand documents, information. If the information doesn't exist in paper or electronically, we can say, right, make it happen, give it to us, so reduce it to writing as well. And then we can get people off then. Often matters do resolve, but if they don't resolve with us just giving it a poke, we can then pass it off to alternative dispute resolution for low-cost, speedy resolution. You can get to us phone, email, web form. We're on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you look. I think we're there somewhere. Our phone line is 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Right? So when businesses stop at night, where they can probably still call us. So please recommend that to your clients. One of the inquiries we did was around payment times. So this is payment times and terms is the way I normally refer to this. This is about the time when a business says it's going to pay you, and we've heard from others here today that this was actually spiralling out, but then there's the time they actually pay you as well. So when we had a look at this, we found that pretty much half the businesses we looked at had at least $20,000 owing to them. So this is money that's not part of their cash flow. Then 14%, so it's a smaller number but still significant, 14% had over $100,000 in debt owed to them, and a quarter had actual bad debts of $10,000 or more. So a real drain. And when you look at also the cost of that, not just purely in terms of cash flow, but in taking the person out of the business, some of the data we saw was that people were spending like about 12 days a year, so 12 what would otherwise be profitable days in the year, actually just chasing unpaid invoices. So a really serious drain on business. Now, who was doing this? Well, on this chart, the dark blue is not good. So when you look at who's biggest on the dark blue, large and multinational corporations at just shy of 60%, medium-sized businesses shy of 50%, and small business picking up the slack there at about a third. So business, especially large business, seriously impacting other business, right? Government's in there as well as other people, but large and multinational corporations were the most likely repeat offenders in all of this. So, this is another great little chart as well. So this chart talks about when you agree a time, and it might be a good time, it might be, I don't know, a week, it could be payment on demand or whatever, it could be a month. When do you actually get paid? So if you were in Japan and you agreed, right, I'll get paid on this day, expect payment almost a week before that day, all right? Then if you're in Belgium, you've got, I think it's about 4 days, Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany and Ireland are all good. You'll get paid at least on time, probably a bit before. Below the line, what happens? Denmark, still not too bad. China, a couple of days. Then we've got Finland, UK starts to spin out, you're coming up towards a week. France and USA, you're now at a week. You go below that, we're heading towards 2 weeks. Canada, Poland, Israel. Where's Australia in this? United Arab Emirates, over 2 weeks. South Africa, Mexico. Maybe Australia's left off the list. No, it's there, bringing up the rear at almost a month late. So this is, you have agreed, business has agreed to pay other business at a certain time, and it's a month later that you actually get paid. Serious stuff. We've had, as a result of our inquiry, some big wins. So one was the federal government has moved from 30 days, which is not too bad, back to 15 days, which is quite reasonable, right? So we've got a shift there. Business Council Australia have their Australian Supplier Payment Code saying 30 days. And we're still, there's a number of businesses on there, has not grown much from when it came in, and we really will want to push to get more people onto that, and also to keep people honest around. And part of that is our National Transparency Register that we've set up, that we're going to start, we're going to keep expanding it, but we've started with the largest companies, so the largest sort of multinationals, Australian companies, ASX sort of listed companies, and starting there to give transparency to actual payment times. So again, it could be a good list to be on if you look, you're paying on time or better than on time, but it will be a bad list to be on because it will be very public when you are dragging the chain around payments. And so that will be payment terms and times as well. There is stuff though that businesses and your clients can do, and we would encourage small businesses to particularly do things like having electronic invoicing, chasing invoices up on the day that they are due, or at least the day after, not leaving it a couple of weeks. So there's a few things in there that businesses can do as well. Another inquiry that we've done, it was around the banks and small business loans. So we found the big four banks consistently engaged in practices that cause significant harm. The banks were unilaterally able to vary contracts, and banks were able to call in loans even when repayments were up to date. Banks could make changes, no notice. They could value the securities at any time at the borrower's expense and not actually show the valuation to the borrower, even though they pay for it, and demand a loan be repaid on short notice. When I started digging through contracts, I also found, because I was wondering how banks were actually accessing non-business accounts of business people, and there's a power of attorney hidden there, I don't know, on page 40 in fine print that grants the bank the ability to step in your shoes and just be you for the day. Some really bad examples in this. We had one example of a business in West Australia. It'd been 40 years with the bank, had bought properties that the bank had encouraged them to buy, had never missed a payment on it. Had never missed a payment in 40 years, but the bank was wanting to move out of WA, and the loan to value ratio of this company wasn't looking the best with property prices in WA, and so they just decided they'd come in and say, right, reduce it $1 million, and then it was the next year would cycle around again after they've sold like the jewel in the crown of the business, because you sell the bit that you can make the best return on. Comes around the next year and say, right, another $1 million please. And so by the time we came in, which was a couple of years ago now when we started, we could see that this business was not going to make the next round. Now that was a good news story. We managed to cut across it. The bank appointed somebody else to look at it, gave them a little bit more time, and the business has actually righted itself. So it should be right now. But again, if we weren't there, if an accountant wasn't there, if there wasn't somebody there to pick this business up, they were going to be gone. So what happened around small business loans? We have got the Australian Bank Association has revised its code of banking practice and sent to ASIC for its approval. There's bits in that I think we could actually improve further, but it's improvement. And also we managed to have the banks also recognise that the unfair contracts terms legislation actually applies to them, as well as all other businesses in Australia, subject to the limits and all that. And so that has been another big plus as well. So what's on our radar? As I've mentioned, illegal phoenixing is right up there. Government procurement, there's a lot of money that government spends in goods and services. Small business, to a large degree, is cut out of that or ends up just being part of the supply chain. That plays in nicely with phoenixing as well, because if it's a construction contract, regularly construction companies will go under, leaving small business down the chain, even though they think everything is sweet because they're on a government contract. They soon find out that it's not so sweet. Access to finance, so started work and continuing to do some big work in this area. The concern is that banks will only lend to you if you have real property, as a general rule. So when you are starting up or wanting to expand, where you can get your credit card, that's maybe 50 grand, you may be able to go to a fintech for up to maybe 200, but then you've got a gap until the banks, if you have not got real property, will be interested in you. And so we're really wanting to improve that space. Disruptive infrastructure, this is the government stepping across things and changing business way business operates. This can be the light rail, it can be car parking, whatever. Access to justice is really important. We've started a large survey to find out how businesses are dealing with disputes. Do they ignore them? Who do they go to? Is it the accountant? Is it somebody else? What happens when you have a dispute? And off the back of that, we'll look at better ways of doing things, and certainly in the ADR space I think there's some really good opportunities there, and it may end up being coupled with something like arbitration or something a bit more determinative as well, but there's some work to be done there. Franchising issues, you only just have to open the paper to see that at the moment. Energy costs, had a good summer. I thought that supply, I was scared that supply was going to be interrupted during that, but we made it through. But going forward, reliability, but also the costs as well. Cyber security, and you've already had some of this. When I ticked off like overpayment, forced billing, phishing and phony investment schemes, I thought you were talking about my son and my bank account, but apparently it goes much further and deeper. So half of the businesses that we speak to say, well, look, we're limited around this because, we limit what we do online. But as you've heard, it's not just online, a website or something, a bad website, but it's call-ups over the phone, email. There's a whole range of things that makes it really important. Now, on our website, we have got what we call a placemat of a quick view of cybersecurity, sort of what's the issues and how your clients can help protect themselves. NBN issues and opportunities, and I take the point that everyone blames the NBN for anything nowadays. There's some really upside to this though. Amazon and Alibaba, for example, that give you access and your clients access to a worldwide market. So there's some real upsides there. But we've had some horrible stories as well. There was one setting up of the NBN in a country town in a little technology settlement that they'd set up. But the NBN in this town was particularly popular, and so a stop order was placed on the NBN. And so the businesses moving into this technology park were told, yep, you're going to have state-of-the-art NBN in the fullness of time. So in the meantime, use your phone. Your phone's got data on it. You just hang out the window and you'll be able to get reception. Also, you will not be allowed ADSL because that would be wrong, giving you ADSL when NBN's about to come, and so we will not connect you up. Again, we stepped into that and helped shift it, but it was fairly crazy. Mental health as well isn't on the board there, but it is something, again, our office is really interested in promoting, and there is material on our website too, and there'll be more that we'll do in that space over time. I should mention as well, so I don't think it's been mentioned tonight, business.gov.au, a government website that seeks to not have you have to go to everybody's separate website or download everybody's separate app. If you go there, there's a bunch of great resources for clients around business plans, cash flow plans, a whole lot, and the ATO's done a fair bit in this space too. If you do business.gov.au/small business, there's a fantastic tool there as well where you can enter like about 5 different sort of indicators of your business. So I'm a new business, I have no employees, I'm in a metropolitan area, whatever, and you enter that data in there, and it will then tell you, well, what is out there for you to be able to use. Is it a tax concession? Is it a grant? What is it? You'll get a whole range of things to think about as a small business. And that is where I will stop until questions.